Welcome to Nourish and Shine, where I talk with passionate leaders in the fields of nutrition, functional and integrative medicine, and wellness, providing inspiration and practical advice to nourish your mind, body, and spirit, optimize your health, and live a whole, vibrant life starting now. The Nourish and Shine podcast is provided for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not medical, mental health, or healthcare advice. The information presented here is not intended to diagnose, treat, heal, cure, or prevent any illness, medical condition, or mental or emotional condition. Please make sure you consult with a trusted healthcare professional before you make any changes. Welcome to Nourish and Shine. Today I'm talking with Erica Mather. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's so much my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, well, I love your book and love your work and can't wait to dive in. But first, I'd love for you to tell our audience about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Erica, and I am the author of Your Body, Your Best Friend, and The Confidence-Crushing Pursuit of Unrealistic Beauty Standards and Embrace Your True Power. Woot, 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 woot. I always feel like there needs to be a cheer at the end of that.
Yes.
To get through saying it. And so the book is, as the title suggests, about creating a friendly relationship with your body and by extension with yourself. And this originates from my work as a yoga therapist, and I help people actually literally take care of their bodies. But I had found that people's attitudes about their bodies really are so much where the hard work begins, because if you don't have a healthy attitude about your body, it really will inhibit your ability to take care of your body for real. And so I have a therapeutic yoga practice here in New York City, and then I wrote the book and founded some coaching programs in order to help people adjust their attitudes around their bodies. So that's me.
I love it. And what was, like, how did you get into yoga? Like, what was your path to get there? And can you tell me more about the type of yoga you practice?
Sure can. I have adult onset migraine headaches. So what brought me to yoga was illness. And I find that oftentimes people arrive in yoga at some sort of like inflection point in their life. And usually it's not like a great inflection point. Usually it's there's my cat.
I love that.
You know, she's like, I'm going to go sit in the basket. Anyway, there's my familiar. I'm a witch. Okay, onward. I find that people, they come to yoga at an inflection point, like a relationship status change, a job status change, an illness. And so I started having adult onset migraine headaches in my 20s. And that was what brought me to yoga. And then specifically the kind of yoga that is really my very first practice is called Forrest Yoga. And it's Forrest, forest, like forest, the woods with 2 R's. And Forrest Yoga is named after my teacher, whose name is Anna Forrest. So we don't do yoga in the woods. That's not what it's about. It's named after her. And sometimes yoga lineages are named after people. Sometimes they're named after concepts. Sometimes people just come up with some bananas name and call it that, right? But this particular yoga lineage is named after my teacher, Anna Forrest. And Forrest Yoga really underpins everything that I do and the content of the book and the way that I approach yoga therapy, because the intent behind Forrest Yoga is to heal very specifically. And you might say, well, isn't the point of yoga to heal kind of broadly? And it's like, maybe, sort of. But the way modern yoga has been taught, it's sort of like, well, we'll just sort of like throw some things at you and hopefully it'll work for you. And Forrest Yoga is very specific in its methodology around helping you to heal through teaching you very specific ways to breathe, to move, to modify poses. And so really, my book in so many ways is a manifestation of this experience that I've had, that the genesis of it was illness, of befriending a sick body.
That's amazing. And when you talk about like healing specifically, I'd love you to dive just a little more deeply into that. And maybe can you speak to how it helped you maybe specifically, or like what sort of techniques helped you with your migraines and doing forest yoga?
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about my teacher first, and then that might help you know more about me and my approach. Is that Anna Forrest was it like a child alcoholic? Like started drinking when she was like less than 10 years old. She was anorexic, bulimic, and also has epilepsy, migraines, and she also has made at least one attempt on her life as a young person. So she found that there was some enmeshment between the status of the spirit and how it shows up in the body. And so forest yoga in many ways goes about trying to fix these two problems simultaneously, which is how do you feel about yourself and being alive? And how is your body? And she was tackling very serious issues: alcoholism, eating disorders, a desire not to be alive. And so, what's in forest yoga is a lot of repair work around the maladies that lead to those symptoms, right? Because something's underpinning those. It's not like one day you wake up and you're like, I'm going to stop eating, right? So something's underneath that. The malady is not the same as the symptoms. So forest yoga is trying to get underneath that and like really talk to you about what it is to be alive, what it is to have a body. Why is that also upsetting? Because it is upsetting, right? And so those are some of the things that are in forest yoga. And then when I arrived at forest yoga, I had a very specific problem I was trying to solve, which is I have migraine headaches. And there's like one tool in forest yoga that often just freaks out the rest of the yoga world. I mean, do this thing called relaxed neck. And it's literally where when you have like a lateral pose, and I'm relying on maybe your understanding of yoga, I'm assuming maybe you do yoga, but let's say you're doing a triangle pose and your torso is sort of like parallel to the floor and your head is hanging off the end of your neck at a weird angle that you never ever have to do in your life unless you're like joyriding out a car window or something, right? So a lot what yoga will have you do is hold your head up and then look at the ceiling. And in forest yoga, what we would do instead is relax the neck and turn the chin and the nose down towards the floor. So when I started sampling different styles of yoga, my one question as a beginner and as a person with a problem to solve, right? People go to yoga, they go to these healing modalities because they have a problem to solve. And then they do it and then they assess, did it work? Did it not work? Should I do more? Should I do less? So I went to yoga with this problem and I was assessing all of the styles relative to the problem. And this one tool forest yoga has, relaxed neck, showed me that my neck was so tight, so painful. Like I remember relaxing my neck and feeling like a spear like running through my jaw and up into my brain. And I was like, this style of yoga has something for me to help me with my migraines, because it was very it was sensible to me that if my neck was disordered, my head might be disordered. Yes, does that
Yeah, that
seem like
totally makes sense.
easily sensible to you? So I went to that. I chose that one style of yoga literally because there was something in it that seemed immediately helpful to me. And then as I kept going, I found out about all the other pieces.
Oh, that's amazing. And I've never tried it. So I totally want to try it. I'm a yoga teacher as well, but I have never done forest yoga. So, and even just like your talk of looking down and relaxing your neck, I've never tried that in triangle. So Yeah, that's super interesting and really makes a lot of sense. As far as your journey to writing your book,
Mhm.
how, like, I know you spoke to kind of the whole experience in Forest Yoga really kind of led you to the book. Can you speak more into kind of your inspiration behind the book and how it came into fruition?
Yeah. So now that I know that you are also a yoga teacher, you might understand that yoga has a marketing problem. And the marketing problem is that it's hard to explain to people what yoga will do for you. Right?
Right.
Yoga is this weird medicine that you're just like, I don't know, take it and something wonderful is going to happen. Yeah? And
Yeah.
if a pharmacist was like, here, take this, I don't really know what it does, but take it and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it works. Take it. You'll be great. You'd be like, oh, no, thank you. Right. No, thank you. But that's the way yoga works, right? If you show up and if you show up with a certain attitude, like, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to find out what's going to happen. You come with an open mind and an open heart. Yoga will do something wonderful in your life. But that's not great marketing, you know. So, what is great marketing is having a problem to solve and then having a solution, right? So, some attempts we make at this in yoga, like yoga for back care, or yoga for insomnia, yeah? Right? So we're trying to back into identifying a problem that a person has, and then here's the tool to solve it. And there's great clinical studies now on like yoga for back care and yoga for insomnia. So it's not like that's a pie in the sky suggestion. Like you're just like, I know it worked for me, so it'll work for you. It's like, no, here's some studies. So I was thinking, what do I have from yoga that's specific to me that would solve a problem that I know other people have? And the problem that I knew other people had was this body image problem. And there's not a lot of great tools out there to solve a body image problem, you know?
I agree. Absolutely.
And it's so enmeshed in so many other parts of our lives. It's so difficult to pin down what actually it is and where it comes from and why. And we can say a lot of true things about that, like body image issues have gotten worse as media exposure has increased. Like we know this, right? But the media exposure isn't really going to go away, right? So, okay, then what? So anyway, I had a problem that I thought was potentially solvable using tools from my own repertoire, my own lineage, and my own experience. So I set about to write the book as an answer to that problem, because then also I could create a business around it that wasn't just, I teach yoga, right? It's very hard to just put yourself out in a marketplace and say, I teach yoga. Great, you and 100,000 other people. Wonderful, you know? But it'll gain you more traction if you say, I can help you solve this problem using yoga.
Yeah. And I was telling you before we started this, I've been reading your book for the last few weeks, and I think it's beautifully written. And it is one of the first books I've read that is just so clear. You also have some of the most beautiful quotes in it. And I just feel like, even though it deals with a lot of kind of heavy things, it leaves you with hope and like feeling like, okay, yes, like other people are dealing with this as well. And like there's things you can do about it. So speaking of things you can do about it, let's talk about social media and like how
Okay.
do you even you mentioned like media and body image, like how do you even begin to explain to people like where do you begin to kind of let go of those standards and, or like images, and stop comparing?
Well, when it comes to social media, I think it's important to curate your feed for your mental health, right? Nobody but you can really take care of your mental health. So if you observe that a certain account makes you feel bad about yourself or degrades your mood or your experience, then stop following it, right? And
Right.
only you can really like assess that. I also think that it's important to then start to populate your feed with body positive voices. And most of those voices that I think are really doing constructive work that isn't kind of sneakily around weight loss or the upholding of societally approved beauty standards, that a lot of them come from the margins. So it's like go looking for uh, people who are disabled, go looking for people who have brown or black skin, go looking for people who are fat, go looking for people who are mentally ill and are very open about their mental illness. Go looking for people who are in recovery from some eating disorder, right? Go looking for those people on the margins and populate your account with them, and then start seeing like how they're engaging with social media. Populate your account with people who are old. That too, right? Because our beauty standards also are very ageist, you know. So, have I left any sort of like? If I left any group out, I'm not sure. I don't think so. Um,
Noticed that though myself, just starting to be really selective. Like, again, listening to your gut feeling about, like, when you see things, are you feeling bad or are you feeling judgment or whatever? Like, how is it making me feel as I look through this? And I think unfollowing is a really good idea. And then again, just putting the things in that like bring you joy, make you feel good, support your self-worth. And I wanted to talk about your account because I love your account and I love some of the beautiful photos you take and post. Can you speak to that and like kind of what inspired you to do that, and like what's the feedback you've received and all of that?
I think you're talking just because we don't have an example, and if people are just listening, they
Oh
won't know.
yeah.
Do you have a particular image you want to describe, or we should describe?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the one in my mind, I think you posted it maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. You were kind of, I think you had your legs kind of split open and you were leaning forward without a shirt, right? And
Mm-hmm.
your back was to the camera.
Hmm.
But it was just like a beautiful pose and it was like so natural. And I just love like, I don't like the organic nature of the photos. I don't know how to say it, but yeah.
Well, I think when we talk about body image, that very closely next to it is like body confidence, right?
Mhm.
Because what people want is they want to feel good in their body, and then they sort of graft that onto body confidence. And so part of what I'm trying to do in my account is to complicate the idea that exhibitionism is the same as confidence,
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
because people who are exhibitionists aren't necessarily confident in the way that you might think. They might actually be insecure, and that is why they are exposing themselves in a particular way. I think that people assume that if a woman shows skin or is posting pictures of her body in a particular way, that she feels good about herself. And that isn't always the case. So I wanted to complicate that while at the same time showing my body, because I think that my body is not part of the like real center of acceptable bodies, right? So for people who don't know me, I'm tall, I'm about 5'9". I am what used to be called Rubenesque, right? So I have a very curvy figure. And in some worlds, and it's all relative, for some people, I'm thin, right? But for our societal beauty standards, I am not thin. I'm a size 12, sometimes a 14, sometimes a 10. So me showing my body is also kind of me showing a body that is going to be controversial potentially for some people. Because, for instance, like even I put up a photo a while ago and talked about the fact that I have back rolls, right? And one of the things that sometimes women hate about themselves are back rolls, right? And and for some people, they might look at those back rolls and be like, ugh. And for other people, they might look at the back rolls and be like, wow, she just put up a photo of her back rolls. Well, that's kind of bold. And for other people, they might look at those back rolls and not even see them and be like, wow, that's beautiful, right? Just see the photography. The photography, they're all self-portraits. I'm using the timer mechanism on my phone. Some of them are more elaborately staged than others. The photo that I think you're talking about, I took a lot of them actually, because I was trying different poses and different lighting. And I usually put up just one from a series but usually there's like 12 or 15. But I also kind of use them to catch the eye of my followers and then to write a caption and really to draw people into like reading the caption. And I think you asked about the responses.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because usually the people who respond are men.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I just had a conversation yesterday with a man about this very topic, right? Because it's very confusing for men to see women put up photography like this about them and not be drawn to comment. Because men have been taught that women's bodies are for them.
Oh, yes. This is, yeah, totally.
So I said to him, he was like, but why would someone put up that photo if they weren't trying to draw the attention of men? And I was like, because it's not for you. It's not for you. And for a man to hear that a photo of a woman's body is not for him is like mind blowing. Like, well, then why would she put it up? For her pleasure.
Yeah.
Not for you to react. Maybe for you to react. Maybe, right? You never know. But in my instance, I'm not putting up a photo of my semi-naked body to garner a reaction of a man. Now, I know it's coming because I also have like a sexy body. It's very curvy. I have big boobs. I have a big butt. You know, I have a lot of like luxurious long hair. You know, it's like sort of the height of femininity in a lot of ways. My body is like an organic manifestation of everything that men think is feminine and that often women think is feminine. Right. So I know it's coming. And usually I just like smile or heart, right? Because they're also reacting to something that's real and true, which is that women are beautiful. And men express their admiration for women by saying you're beautiful because it's true. It's actually true. And they're like, wow, it's beautiful. But this little differentiation, like it's not for you, is like, they're like, and it's really hard to uncondition women and uncondition men because men and women have been taught that women's bodies are for men. Right. So the photography is a very long game about deconditioning around so many things. the other thing that I make an effort to try to point out is that exhibitionism is easy for me. In part because I grew up as a competitive swimmer. So I spent a lot of time mostly naked, standing around with men and women. And it's very natural for me. Yeah. I'm kind of naked in front of people. So I also want to like complicate that, right? That I'm accustomed to having my body visible. It was a long answer. Do you feel satisfied with that answer?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And you brought up femininity there, and I'd like to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
As far as kind of like tips, I guess, to embrace femininity and like the importance of femininity almost in self-acceptance, I think, for women. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the first thing is to know that it's going to be a project, right? How how femininity can be performed versus how it feels organically to you. Those are going to be very different things. You know, I have had boyfriends. I'll just say like I'm heterosexual. I'm a cis woman. So I date men, and so I've had men and boyfriends who were like displeased with my performance of femininity. Right? Like I didn't do it enough. I like the high heels and the dress and the makeup. They wanted more. I was kind of like, but look at this body. Isn't it sufficient? You know, right? And so I only say that because I think there's a difference between the performance of femininity and the organic manifestation of femininity, right? And how we come to terms with those pieces, I think, is very personal. And I would like to say that I think the wellspring of very healthy manifestations of femininity, whether performed or whether organic, comes from feeling safe. And so I think that a normal part of being a woman that we've normalized so deeply that we forget is feeling unsafe. I mean, it's hard to say past that. It's like there are certain things you won't do because you're a woman and it would put you at risk. For instance, taking a nap on a park bench, which men do all over New York City. Take a nap on a park bench. I would never dream of taking a nap on a park bench. That's not safe, right? And they don't think about this, but we know. So part of this very particular conundrum is the truth that you're not safe while carving out a safe space for yourself. And that from that can spring like how do you want to be a woman? What kind of a woman do you want to be? Whether you were born with a pussy or not born with a pussy, you know, like how do you want to be a woman? And what parts of it make you less safe, right? Like I'm navigating this all the time in New York City. Like I have this long, luxurious, beautiful hair, right? And I rarely get from point A to point B without a man commenting on my hair. So pretty, right? And that's so interesting because here there's that little thing, right? Is like it's true, it's pretty. But the minute you say it's pretty, you make me feel unsafe. Whereas he thinks he's acknowledging beauty, but there's this male female thing that it's like, oh, now there's attention drawn to me. And if I don't say thank you or perform like some show of being placating, right, then maybe I'm in danger.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a funny thing, right? Because it's not me doing anything. I just have some hair. That's it. That's the organic thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the performance of it thing would be like, what am I doing with my hair? Sometimes I get rid of it. I hide it. Sometimes I let it down. Sometimes I make a braid, right? And so how we engage with femininity, I think, is very much curled around how is it that we feel safe or how do we feel unsafe. And my hope would be that all of us start to create that from a sense of safety and finding out how you can make yourself feel safe and feel safe enough to like broadcast your femininity or conceal it. And sometimes I conceal it, you know. Sometimes I'm like, here it is, come what may. I had a boyfriend talk to me recently, an ex-boyfriend who we talk now and then, and he was like, I remember that night we went out and you were wearing this white dress and you looked incredible, and I was very worried about you walking home. And I was like, I don't even have a thought about that. It was so interesting because I learned one thing, that if you walk forward fast with confidence, you're probably not going to be bothered.
Yeah.
This doesn't work in New York City, I gotta say. Someone who's really intent on intervening is going to intervene.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you bring up so many things there that are so, like, we could just have separate episodes on that whole answer. But I think one of the things you bring up is femininity isn't necessarily a lot of makeup and wearing the dress and whatever. Like, femininity is kind of, it can be way different than that. Like, it can be a state of mind. Like, it can be like natural beauty, right? And like sometimes I think that natural beauty is even more feminine, in my definition maybe, than something that is more like created artificially. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, now we're going more to like the spirit of femininity. So we got
Yeah.
formative femininity, organic femininity, and then we got like the spirit of femininity, like feminine power, as sort of the, you know, the woo girls would say now, you know.
Yeah.
And the way I think about that is like your feminine power is what is how do you affect a space? Like when you show up in the room, how do you affect the space? And that's part of like the power of it. And usually we affect the space in ways that are peaceful. Yeah. Like women bring equanimity, compassion, you know, tolerance. Right? Those are some of the things that we're sort of good at, I think, because maybe like having children requires some of those of you. You could speak to that better than I
Yeah.
can. Yeah, you're like lots of patience, lots of
Yeah.
tolerance, right?
Patience, tolerance. I think those are high up there.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you bring? Like women are manifestors, women are changers, right? And so the essence of femininity, I think, is in many ways, what do you bring to the game that changes the space when you show up? So that people are like, how did you do that? So part of my feminine power is that despite I'm doing all the talking now, is that usually what happens is I'm doing all the listening. And people are like, wait a minute, I don't tell anybody that. What did you just do? And I'm like, lots of breathing, lots of just creating space, lots of non-judgment, lots of like, just like whatever you say, it's cool. I'm good. I don't care. Right. So that happens a lot. Like even I went to the Met on Monday and, you know, just random people talk to me. Random people always talk to me. It's like, she looks like a person I should talk to. So like that's part of my thing is
Yeah.
actually eliciting people's the thing they wouldn't tell anybody else.
Oh, cool. So speaking of woo, let's talk about the koshas because
Okay,
they're not
sure.
necessarily woo, but like not everybody may know what we're talking about. So first, could
Kind
you,
of woo.
yeah, it's a little woo. So first, could you kind of explain the koshas and then go into like kind of just how it helps you and like kind of get to know yourself better and love yourself and care for yourself. I love this part of your book.
Thank you. Well, I identified that love yourself, while wonderfully aspirational, is also wildly problematic because it assumes two things. One, that you know what love is, and the other thing is that you know what you are. And by and large, people are very confused about both those things.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I don't know. So I figured let's tackle this piece of self, right? Because that's what the book is about. And so for your listeners, I'll just educate in what the koshas are. So the koshas are a system for understanding a human being that come specifically from the yogic tradition. And in this model of a human being, the human being comes in 5 layers. And the layers are kind of intermeshed. They're not precise, but one thing kind of goes inside of the other and then permeates out through all of them. So the first layer, if you think about a big layer, is what we call the food body. And the food body is this thing. It's your body that is made out of food. Right? That's what it's made out of. Right? It is nourished by food and water. So the next layer in is called your energy body. And the energy body is the part of you that is fed by breath and light and sleep. Those are the things that really feed that part of your body. And the things that it governs is it like governs your heartbeat because that's electricity, right? So that's literally electricity. It governs your body temperature. It governs peristalsis. Peristalsis is how your intestines squeeze food through one end to the other. Yeah. The next layer in is called your mind body. And your mind body, now this is where it's sort of, you might be confused because oftentimes in the Western world, we think mind is the thing that thinks. Not so in this particular case. Mind is the thing that feels. So mind is your senses. Mind is consciousness running through your vision, consciousness running through you listening, consciousness running through you smelling, consciousness running through you tasting, consciousness running through you feeling the texture of your clothes on your skin, the feeling of your butt sitting on the thing it's sitting on, right? The feeling of your heart. If you pause, you can feel your heart. That's feeling. Yeah. And that thing from the inside is called interoception, which is basically you feeling yourself from the inside versus you feeling yourself from the outside. And then the thing of where you are in space, like if you lift an arm and you know that your arm is lifting, that's called proprioception. But this is all mind. And the next layer in is actually the thing we think of as mind, usually in the Western world. It's your intellect body. It's the part of you that thinks that, the sound in my voice is nice or annoying, right? It's the part of you that is deciding whether you think what I'm saying is crazy or it makes perfect sense. It's the part of you that decides what's right, what's wrong, yes, no, up, down. It's discernment in a way. Yeah. And then the final piece the yogis call the bliss body. And the bliss, back up. So the intellect body is fed by like information. Yeah. That's what it like, and yeah, it's yummy to that. Yeah. Books, conversation, that's what feeds it. So the fifth body is called the bliss body. And the bliss body is fed by joy. And the easiest way to ascertain whether your bliss body is in good shape or not is to find out what you do for fun. Just ask, like, what do you do for fun? What brings you delight in being alive? And you could also think about it as your spirit body, just this part of you that, is really connected to the world and life and purpose. So These are the koshas: food body, energy body, mind body, intellect body, bliss body. You could call it joy body. Yeah. If bliss is a difficult word, because I find bliss is a difficult word, because when was the last time you felt blissful? Do you recall? Yeah, I know. But maybe you could land on joy a little bit more easily, but bliss is like joy like on drugs, right? Really, basically, right? Right. So bliss is like joy, but then times 1,000, right? You're like ecstatic, you know. So this is a model for how do you come to know the thing you call self. Right? So you can think about it in these 5 domains. Oh, these are all part of me, the thing I call myself, myself. And then you can come to know each part of yourself kind of on its own terms and start to feed it the things that make it feel nourished. What's some good food? Do you breathe well? Have you slept enough? Right? When it comes to the senses, are you surrounding yourself with things that are yummy to your senses? Do you move in ways that you like, right? Because that proprioception thing has to do with movement, yeah? Do you wear clothes that you actually like, that feels good on your skin? I'm very picky about this. Like if I don't like a fabric, gone. Then the intellect body, it's like, how are you feeding that? Have you learned something new recently? Did you learn something new today? And then the joy body is just like, what are you doing for fun? Like, how are you enjoying your life? And not dutiful fun, right? Because sometimes I think we think that, like, well, if it served a purpose and it was fun, there you go. No, it has to be like purposeless fun. Like children, that kind of fun. They're not thinking like, well, if I have some more fun, I'll be more productive later. No. Right? They're just having fun for the sake of fun. Really, play. There's a word for it in yoga. It's called Leela. It means divine play. And you just play for the sheer fun and delight and sake of it. And a lot of this sounds like things that we are told we should not do. Yes. So it's very contradictory to much of what we've been taught. Did I answer the question?
I think so. And I wanted to bring that into part of how I came across your work was through the Center for Mindful Eating. I had seen a webinar you did there, and I thought it was great. And so I wanted to bring in today kind of some of that discussion around mindful eating. And I think even talking about the layer of the koshas that has to do with all of the senses really makes me think about mindful eating and how oftentimes we're not like tuning in with all of the senses. Can you speak to what like mindful eating means to you? Also how your mindfulness practice, like from yoga, maybe translates into your relationship with food?
Mindful eating means eating with a certain degree of presence. And usually what I'm looking for when I think about what I want to eat, although I'm trying to retool this, it's sort of like a pandemic retooling, which I'm sure everybody can kind of relate to. But what I'm looking for is like a food that like rings a bell. It's like ding, 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 ding. That's what I want to eat. And the issue with mindful eating is that, or even intuitive eating, mindful eating is something that I'm new to, actually, thanks to the Center for Mindful Eating. And I thought they had great like definitions of all this. I'm more familiar with intuitive eating, and intuitive eating, I always thought presupposed that you have a relationship with your body so that you might know what your body wanted. And I was always left sort of wondering, how are you supposed to create that relationship with your body? Like where did all that pre-work happen? But mindful eating, I think they dovetail. And so the mindfulness is around feeling inside for like, how does the food affect you? Right. And usually we only know how to make decisions in the future based on how things went in the past, right? So it's much about data. It's like collecting data. Oh, when I ate that, I felt like that. right? And I don't want to feel that way. So maybe I'll eat something different under those circumstances. And it's all circumstantial too. But if you have a nice even blood sugar, it's going to be very different than if your blood sugar is doing this, like what you feel like eating, how it impacts you. Mindful eating, I think the way that they describe it also has to do with what sort of state of mind are you in when you eat, right? So if you're eating when you're anxious, you're eating when you're angry, or you're eating when you're sad, also being aware of how the emotions and the food interplay with one another.
Right. I think that's one of the most important things, really, because if you're still in like a sympathetic state, or like you're not feeling like safe, like we were talking about earlier, right? So if you're not in that safe, like rest and digest space when you go to eat, or even like mentally still thinking, or like on the Ferris wheel, right? Or hamster wheel, like you don't digest the same. And the meal experience is totally different than when you do become present. And one of the things I share all the time with people is like, just sit down and take 3 breaths. And I struggle with that all the time. Like I'll be eating and I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot 3 breaths, like, but just that simple practice sometimes can totally shift your experience of a meal.
That's a great recommendation. And where that sort of shows up in my life is sit down at a table.
Yeah.
Like by the time I've committed to like sitting down at a table, not sitting down with it on my lap, but sitting down at a table, it already, for me, it shifts the experience. I have to say that my experience of eating was very closely tied to like disentangling emotional eating from eating, and identifying the emotions and trying to deal with them on their own terms, which doesn't mean comfort food and comfort eating isn't something that you should do now and then, right? I think that a lot of times like comfort eating gets a bad rap, but it's like, actually no, a lot of times those foods are nostalgic. They connect you with a time in your life that you felt safe, right? And that's valuable. That was a great, I really enjoyed getting to know about the Center for Mindful Eating.
Yeah,
Are you a member? Are you a
I
regular?
am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing their certificate program because I, like you, not that long ago, just kind of learned about it. And I had kind of understood intuitive eating, but felt the same way. Like, so like one day you just wake up and you intuitively eat. Like, what about everything that has happened in my life and all the, you know, struggles I have around food, or, my relationship with food? I just forget that. And intuitively I know what to eat. So I didn't exactly understand that, but I think the mindful eating piece did help me to bring it together. I also think it resonates with me a lot because of yoga, and just kind of finding, almost like taking your practice off the mat. So instead of, practicing mindfulness only when you're in yoga, or only when you're walking and trying to look at flowers or whatever, I think practicing mindfulness when you eat is actually a very worthwhile experience, and can really change, like I mentioned, digestion and your relationship with food, and like your appreciation of food. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I'd like to learn more about it as well. Personally, in my own life, what I'm trying to do right now is to retool my eating habits and lifestyle sort of away from being very busy in New York. Because very busy in New York means on the go. And as a yoga teacher, it always meant like there was never any time to eat. So I gravitated towards very high calorie, low density things. And if you only eat that way over a time, it will take a toll on you. So I'm trying to retool, thanks to the pandemic, sort of back to like, oh, there's more vegetables on the plate and I have time to sit down and chew. I don't have to just get the highest calorie, lowest volume thing that's going to carry me from point A to point B for the next 5 hours.
yeah,
So
and
it's
I
kind of
think
very
about,
interesting.
yeah, I think about like the energy, to get woo again, but like the energy of food too. And if you think about like fruit or vegetables or things that like were recently harvested, I feel like if you think of your energy bot or your energy body and like the different layers, like it is feeding like that energy body too, based on like the things you're taking in, whether that's food or experiences or,
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like thinking about how foods connect with which part of the kosha system,
Yeah.
right? And that foods that were more recently harvested are closer to sunlight and might feed the energy body better. Yeah. My friend Jenna Hollenstein, actually, who interviewed me at that TCME, she's writing a book trying to, I think, demystify intuitive eating in a particular way and sort of tie it into some mindfulness. So, yeah, keep an
Yeah.
eye out.
Yeah, I will. So I'd love for you to share just maybe a practice or two that listeners could do to kind of begin working with kind of becoming, again, like best friends with their body, right? Like to tune into their body and find some acceptance.
Yeah, so the thing that I think is the thing to do, which may sound like the most like banal or oh, you're like snore, like I've been taught this a million times, but it's really relevant is breathing, because breathing is your tether to your life. Without breath, there is no life, like immediately.
Right.
So the quality of the breath is important. I think that conscious or mindful breathing is also a very immediate way to tell your body that you care about it and that you are choosing life. I mean, because this is very important. Like, we were torn out of the cosmos and brought here. And so then you were giving life, but then choose life is a very different matter. So let's just do this. Just sit up tall and put one hand over the center of your chest. You could stack the other hand over top of that one. And as you inhale, just feel your chest lift into your hands. And if you know Ujjayi breathing, I use Ujjayi. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. And then I want you to just measure the breath. So as you inhale, find out how long is it taken. You might just count to discover. And as you exhale, count to discover, like, how long is the exhale. And you might be surprised at what you discover. What I find often is that people take like small animal sized breaths. They don't take human sized breaths. Yeah. It's like you're breathing for a hamster. What's going on here? Right. So could you breathe for a human? So let's just use 3 as kind of the benchmark, and we'll make the inhale and the exhale even. So as you breathe in for a count of 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. And just rest your hands down and take a few breaths on your own and see if you can feel what it's like to give your body a little bit more breath. And it's just moving towards a human-sized breath. I don't think 3 is human-sized yet. I think 5 is human-sized. But at least now, you're in the domain of like small pony instead of hamster. Yeah. If you're like, that's easy, go for 4. Let's see, like, could you make it 4? And fill the time evenly. So it's not like you fill up, wait, and then empty and wait. No, it's like fill the time evenly. 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. You take all that time. And let's do one more thing. As you breathe in the energy of I care about you. I care about you. And if you want to put your hand back over your heart, because like hand to heart, I care about you. And as you exhale, breathe out and wash the energy of I care about you through every cell in your body. And you can say the words silently inside or out loud if that helps you. Or you can just feel the energy of I care about you. And you may have a very strong emotional reaction to that. So if you're a listener and you're doing this and you're like, whoa, what just happened? Like that is how emotional your body feels around waiting so long just to know that you care. And if you're listening and you're doing this and you're like, I'm not feeling anything, lady, that's also okay. It might mean like you're a pro. Rock on. Right? It might mean that there is resistance. Also okay. Just notice, no praise, no judgment. It's just something's there. If anything, get curious. Curiosity is the energy that cuts through all stagnation. And then finish up, just rest your hands down on your thighs or your knees or fold them in your lap. And just feel the result, like the experience of just something that simple that took 3 minutes. And that's it.
I love that. What a beautiful practice. I think, even though breath is so simple and we all feel like we should do it, it is something that's often underappreciated and something that you can tune into with no, like, doesn't cost anything. You don't have to buy any fancy devices, like literally just a moment of paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and nobody's stopping you. It's the kind of thing you can do at a stoplight. It's the kind of thing you can do while you wait in line at a grocery store. It's just like inhale for 3, 2, 1. I was doing this, not this particular thing, but a lot of ujjayi breathing, actually, because on public transportation we have to wear masks, and the masks are kind of promoting like mouth breathing. And so I was just like, close your mouth, breathe through your nose all the way home. Really long, really slow. I felt better for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. So, wrapping up the interview, one of the things I always love to ask our guests is, what does nourish mean to you?
Nourish makes me immediately go to my spirit. Which I think a lot of times we're deprived, we're starved around our spirit. It makes me think like, what am I going to do today to improve kind of the joy aspect of my life, to connect with my life purpose, to make sure that I don't feel frustrated every day. And I have a lot of freedom and latitude in that, in part because I teach yoga for a living, right? So it's like sort of the lifestyle of it is built in. I don't have any kids also. So like, while kids bring a lot of joy for a lot of people, they also sometimes, like, you're like thinking, well, maybe I need to wait a couple of years for that joy, until that child is, not 3 and 5, but maybe 5 and 7, Yeah. So it's like, what can I do to like feed that? And so that's what I think about with Nourish. I think in part because I am a yogi, I also feel like really looking very deeply for how my life is of service to the world, and also making sure that I'm not just following my duty, my spirit duty, but also that there's room for me, just that divine play, just like that. I'm doing my job, God or spirit or whatever you want to call it. I'm doing my job. But there's also just me, just playing over here. So that's what I think of when I think of Nourish.
Oh, I love that answer. And what's one thing you do regularly for self-care?
I sleep a lot. I sleep a lot.
That's great.
I kind of feel like sleep is at the foundation of everything else. It's really hard to have enough energy to take care of yourself during the day or to take care of other people if you're not well rested. And also because I have migraines, I'm very defensive around this, because if I don't sleep well, I'm heading down a path that's going to become a headache.
Yeah. And I think as a parent, it's one thing I learned is like the value of sleep. You kind of don't know how good you have it until you don't sleep for like years.
Years.
So yeah.
Yeah, years. Get ready for 5 years without a full night's sleep.
Yeah.
Up to the task.
But I think sleep is just so valuable. So yeah.
Yeah, and if I also want to say, if you're a parent and you don't have access to great sleep, make a yoga nidra practice for yourself. Just 20 minutes of yoga nidra at some point during the day can be the difference between you making it and you just feeling like you're running on fumes. So yeah.
I love that advice. So where can our audience go to find out more about you?
You can go to my website, www.ericamather.com. You can go to my website. You can get on my mailing list. I would love it if you got on my mailing list, because I feel very funny about social media right now. I feel like it doesn't belong to us, actually. They're very clear about that. It doesn't belong to you. But if you're more of sort of like you want media kind of in front of your face all the time, and, Amy mentioned how much she enjoys my Instagram account. You can find me on Instagram at Erica_Mather. I'm mostly there. My Facebook account is a little bit like a ghost town, and basically Twitter is just a placeholder. I'm really on Instagram.
Awesome. And I can link that up in the show notes as well.
Please.
Thank you so much for being a guest today. I absolutely love talking with you. Thank you so much for listening to the Nourish and Shine podcast. I'll be back next month with another amazing guest. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to leave me a ratings or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. Also, check out my website. It's amysapola.com, where I offer one-on-one packages, online courses, and group classes. I'd love to connect with you on social media as well. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, may you be nourished and well. The Nourish and Shine podcast is provided for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not medical, mental health, or healthcare advice. The information presented here is not intended to diagnose, treat, heal, cure, or prevent any illness, medical condition, or mental or emotional condition. Please make sure you consult with a trusted healthcare professional before you make any changes.